Welcome to another edition of GTN Coach's Corner. On this episode, eating before training and before racing.
Yeah, why do races feel easier than training?
Could my wetsuit be slowing me down?
Yeah, and a couple of swimming-related questions around kicking and breathing. But do keep your questions coming in using the hashtag GTN Coach's Corner. But let's roll straight on into this week's with the first question, which came under our recent fasted training video. This one comes from Damon Hammond, 1223. Most triathlons start early in the mornings. If you ask what people have as their pre-race breakfast, it won't be very much, and usually just simple carbs. Is this enough to race at full potential? How long do the carbs from the day before last as glycogen in the muscles? How much should I be eating before the race for optimal performance?
Yeah, clearly our video got them thinking.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Well, it is important. It's an important point because you will be somewhat fasted after a night of sleep, even if you had a really good meal the night before. And you do need to eat something before training. But what and how much is quite important, because it can, too much can definitely ruin your race, but not enough can also seriously impair your performance. If you've tapered well and you've cut down your training like you should have, and you've consistently eaten all week up to the race as you should, your stores should be pretty close to full when you go to bed that night before the race. And overnight, that fasting shouldn't take them down too much. So you can top them up pretty easily with a small breakfast, maybe 600 to 800 calories. And that could be a few slices of toast or a couple of muffins or even a protein shake, something like that you can take in easily. The issue obviously comes that Ironmans and stuff start at like stupid o'clock in the morning, and you've got to get up at even stupid o'clock in the morning at like 3 a.m. and you don't want to eat anything. But you can force some things down. Just a small breakfast will definitely help you to just top up those stores, because if you don't, you're definitely putting yourself at a disadvantage for the day ahead.
Another thing to consider, and I've spoken to a few people that have struggled like you're talking about here, actually just sipping a carb drink in the morning on the way to transition and various things like that. Whilst it may not feel like breakfast as such, you are still just topping up the glycogen stores. Even
if you have topped them up though, you must be aware that your liver and muscle glycogen stores will only last you 90 to 120 minutes. And then you will have to switch to your reserves, or you have to switch to what you're eating. So you need to make sure that you start eating and drinking early. Don't wait until 120 minutes into your race before you start eating and drinking. As soon as possible, as early as possible in your race, start topping up those stores and getting that fuel in so that you can prolong the running out of fuel for as long as possible.
Yeah, cool. Next question, similar actually, from P. Steam. When I train in the morning, I can't hold down any food when I train within 2 hours of eating. Could I take a gel before training in the morning to avoid training fasted?
Well, okay. Well, a gel will help. Any food will help, actually, because you can kind of trick your body into believing that it's got fuel and food, and therefore it will mobilize its glycogen reserves. If you don't have anything at all and you train completely fasted, your body's going to still be in that fat burning state, and it will stay in that fat burning state. It won't mobilize any of those glycogen reserves if it doesn't think there's anything else coming. But you can trick it into, well, you got some fuel, now I can release some of those glycogen reserves. However, the gel won't last very long. You'll burn it off pretty quickly. And if you don't feel at all while you're training, 90 to 120 minutes, you are going to run out of fuel, which is okay for most of your training sessions. Well, I mean, most people are not doing over 90 minutes. But eat something to break that fast.
Yeah, maybe play around with what you eat in the morning, different breakfast options, and obviously depending on the type of activity you're doing. If you're heading out the door and you're doing quite an intense run session, obviously that's going to require very different fuel versus maybe just going for a gentle cycle for 60 minutes at most. So yeah, play around with that and consider that.
Yeah, liquid fuel is also a good idea. You can have a protein shake that is out your system, you swallowed and absorbed before you even start your session in 20 minutes or so. So play around what you're doing. It doesn't have to be a gel. There are options out there. Okay, our next question. Justin Weaver, when I'm racing, I feel like my RPE decreases at higher exertion levels. So what would normally feel like zone 3 effort feels more like a zone 2 effort. Is this typical?
Wow.
I think what he's saying is that race day feels a lot easier than training, which is exactly what we're looking
What's
for.
The problem? Well, this is obviously exactly what we want. I mean, it sounds like you're feeling good on race day, and therefore you've tapered down nicely and feeling really fresh. Obviously to get to that, you're peak fitness, good taper, adrenaline on race day as well. Can't forget that. Being motivated as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of extra motivation on race day, crowds cheering on the side, etc. All makes it feel easier. And then of course there's that, what we just spoke about, that ideal nutrition. You've tapered, you've eaten properly the night before, you've had your little breakfast in the morning, then you probably had some caffeine. And all of those things lead to a lower RPE, even for the same effort. It's exactly what we want. It allows you to hit that peak on race day, to hit your PBs on race day, which is what we're looking for. The issue obviously comes in that people feel that good on race day, and then they why can't I feel that good all the time? And then they get very frustrated because the rest of the training feels really slow, and they're like, well, I obviously did something wrong. I need to do what I did on race day, so I need to have that breakfast, and I need to have those gels every day when I'm out training, and etc., etc. And the reality is, you can't. You're training so that you feel good on race day. Training is not going to feel as good as race day, and it shouldn't. It's not race day, it's training. Set your expectations where they need to be.
I actually used to have a coach that said, make sure training is harder than it feels on race day. So you actually
it's not
feels
unusual.
Like race day is easy.
Yeah, it's not unusual for athletes to say that their hardest training sessions are harder than their race day, and they should be, because everything's not optimized on the training sessions. It is on race day. So keep it up. You're actually doing great there, Justin.
All right, moving into this is quite a specific question and possibly to a niche audience, but we're going to answer it nonetheless. So it's from Kajo. Okay, most of the advice for triathletes is for poor swimmers. I was a reasonable swimmer who did 200 metres fly as a youth. I'm much better in the swim leg than bike and run, so I need to capitalise on this, and so purchased a Roka Maverick X for the ocean swim. I'm going to try and sum this up because it's quite a long question. Yeah. Basically, what they're finding is that they're not able to utilise the kick. They feel like they have quite a good kick. They've tried to modify their swim stroke so that they feel like they can still get the most from it, and therefore like reducing their kick and trying to use their arms a bit more. But still, they're just not feeling like they're getting the most out of their swim, and starting to wonder whether they've got the wrong wetsuit, or is there something else going on?
They're actually at the point where they think, should I just never wear a wetsuit unless it's absolutely mandatory and the water's completely freezing? And I would say no, that's not the answer. The answer is that you need to find a wetsuit that does suit you. This is an unusual problem, and I think quite a lot of our viewers are probably sitting there watching this going, oh man, I wish I had this guy's problems. I wish I could swim so well that my wetsuit was slowing me down. It's a pretty rare problem, but we're going to answer it because it's interesting.
Yeah, now, probably the problem for you is that a majority of wetsuits are made for triathletes who typically, unfortunately, have a poor swim leg. And so we're trying to improve their technique. And also, with that, obviously, it's a more buoyant, it's making you more buoyant and lifting you up in the water, which is why you're probably struggling to get that traction on the swim. And if you're wearing the wrong suit, there's more buoyancy in the legs, which a lot of the suits do. Your legs are even higher than they need to be.
Yeah, I think even the best swimmers, most of them are probably only 90% of the way to the ideal body position. And so that wetsuit even helps them. It's the very rare swimmer, possibly our question asker here, who is already in the perfect body position, and then they have the issue where the wetsuit might push them out of the perfect body position. It can lift you actually so high that your legs are almost kicking air more than they're kicking water. I mean, they'll be in the water more than the air, but they are almost, that main propulsion that they're very good at getting from their legs is happening in the air. And too high, too close to the surface of the water. So they lose that kick propulsion. It also quite often happens that the wetsuits are made to aid or assist in body rotation for someone. And if someone's already got good body rotation, it can throw out all their time in where they over rotate, or they feel like they're not balancing on the wetsuit like they want to. So all these things can actually lead to a wetsuit slowing you down or making you at least feel less comfortable or less efficient in the water than you might otherwise be.
No, I obviously came from a swimming background, and I actually did go through a period of time when I was trying to get used to open water swimming and triathlon swimming, where my swimming wasn't quite as good as I expected it to be. My route, of course, for this was actually staying in an environment that I knew I was comfortable in, the swimming pool. I know how to swim in the swimming pool, and wearing a wetsuit in the swimming pool. So rather than jumping straight into the open water and starting to have to sight and follow other people being knocked around and trying to also get used to a wetsuit, it's actually, let's wear the wetsuit in the swimming pool and try and get better at just generally swimming in that. And I found I did have to change a few things. Like I did have to kick lower because I also was kicking in the air a tiny bit. Also, I was lifting my head up a bit too much. That also was affecting my whip position, various things like that. So I would recommend, if you can, wear in the swimming pool initially, try and get really comfortable with it and then start going to the open water. But if you're still struggling, it might be something else.
Yeah, you probably need to shop around for your wetsuit. Now, wetsuits all come in different thicknesses and different amounts of buoyancy, and some of them will have ranges that are more buoyant and some of them are ranges that are less buoyant. Some of them might have a 1-3-5 where they're only 1 millimeter in the shoulders all the way down to 5 millimeter in the legs, so that they're really balanced, really buoyant for that poorer swimmer. Some of them might be 3 millimeters across the board so that you sit in the same position. And you need to figure out what's best for you and not necessarily go on the marketing hype of the wetsuit manufacturers that say this one's going to be best for you, because that might not be the case with your particular swim stroke. Unfortunately, the most flexible wetsuits and the ones that are optimized for the best swimmers tend to also be the most expensive ones, I'm afraid to say. But that is the case, and the really good top-of-the-range wetsuits, we all find don't detract from your swimming that much.
Yeah. All right, on to our final question, Aram5642. A couple of questions, actually. First one is it a good exercise for the kick when you disable your hands and you hold your palms joined together on your lumbar spine?
Whoa,
then the second question is, does the exhale technique matter? I prefer to exhale with my mouth loose and slightly open, but not sure if that induces more drag. Interesting questions.
Interesting questions indeed. I think what he's trying to do by putting his palms on his lower back, I assume he's on his stomach when he's doing this, is to get a good body position while you're kicking. So essentially, you have to keep your head down and your kick is where you need it to be, as opposed to kicking all the way on the bottom of the pool because your head is out the water. But you don't need to do that. A kickboard is there for a reason. That is what it's designed for. If you hold your kickboard correctly out in the front, you don't necessarily have to put your face in the water to work and practice that good kick technique. And once you get your kick technique correct, you'll feel it makes a big difference.
I think probably the gold standard when it comes to just kicking without, obviously using your arms, is wearing a snorkel so that you don't have to move your head around or lift it up and affect your body position. And you can just kick along, arms by your side, up above you, streamline position, however you like, and you can just kick along. Keep
your face in the water and keep balance. Yeah, a swim snorkel is definitely a good way to practice that kick. I don't think necessarily holding your hand.
I've never seen that before, and I can't imagine that's going to help in any way.
No.
It might actually even start just affecting breathing and things like that, which moves us on. Exhale technique, which is better. What do you do?
I breathe out through my mouth all the time.
Me too.
Yeah, always have.
And that's obviously doing a tumble turn.
I have to really concentrate hard to actually push water out from my nose while I'm swimming. Except, the tumble turn, a good breath out through your nose.
I think I do. I mean, this is the thing, I'm not even sure. But I definitely breathe out through my mouth whilst I'm swimming. There is no right or wrong or better, really. It's not going to induce more drag as well, to answer that part of the question. It's whatever you feel comfortable with. Obviously, there's a lot of talk around mouth, nose breathing and all this sort of stuff. But honestly, it's just you need to make sure when you're swimming you're getting as much oxygen in, air in, and breathing out, and it's controlled, and you feel comfortable.
And it's relaxed. So if you can relax completely, and that obviously often happens when you relax that jaw and breathe out through your mouth, and you're not going to increase any drag, and you're going to be relaxed, and relaxed is always the best answer in the pool. The reason that a lot of people say nose breathing or breathe out through your nose is to control the rate of exhalation. Because if you're breathing out through your nose, you can only trickle it out a certain speed. So therefore people don't breathe in and then just exhale everything quickly and then swim a stroke and a half with absolutely no air in them whatsoever. You can control the breathing a lot more through your nose. However, with a bit of concentration and practice, you can control that just as easily through your mouth. So you can breathe out through your mouth as long as you're finishing your exhalation just before you take the next inhalation. You want to make sure that you're breathing out almost the whole time your face is underwater, and then breathing in again out the water, rather than this breathe in full exhalation out your mouth and then and gasp, because that gasp will definitely affect your swim.
Yeah. All right. Great questions. Thanks for sending them all in. Again, please keep them coming in using the hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. Drop in the comment section below this video or any other video. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.
Goodbye.